Before we move on with more fundamentals, let's wrap this little sphere maker script in some UI and make it a tool that others can more easily use. This is a common thing to do with useful scripts, and MaxScript has several special features that make it pretty simple to do. So, let me open an updated version of the script, which I have saved in a disk file. I can open a script through the Open Script item in the MaxScript menu, and it's presented in a script editor window. You can see the original for loop slightly modified here, embedded in some other stuff. I can run this script directly in the editor window using the Evaluate All item in the script editor file menu, or I can use the shortcut Ctrl-E. This is equivalent to selecting everything in the window and hitting number pad Enter. Okay, Ctrl-E. This opens a dialog window with some spinners and a button. These let me select how many spheres I want and what the radius increase from sphere to sphere should be, and then pressing the button creates the spheres. Let's delete the spheres and change the parameters and press the Create button again to make another set. Okay, simple but cool. The script has two main parts. This large section defines the contents of the dialog, and this statement at the end actually opens the dialog based on that definition. The dialog contents are specified using a special piece of syntax called a rollout definition. As its name suggests, you can use this to define rollouts for Max command panels and other multi-rollout dialogues, but we are using it here just to define the contents of a simple dialog without rollout panels. The definition is introduced by the word rollout. This is followed by a name that you make up for the definition. You use this name to refer to the definition elsewhere in the script, such as when you want to actually open it, and it distinguishes the rollout from other definitions you might have in a complex script. This is followed by a text string which sets the title for the dialog window. Then comes the body of the definition containing several lines of code surrounded by opening and closing parentheses. The first three lines in the body are specs for the user interface controls you saw in the dialog, 2 spinners and 1 button. Each line is introduced by a keyword denoting the kind of UI control. MaxScript supports about 25 different kinds of controls, including sliders and radio buttons and checkboxes and color pickers and so on, all listed in the Rollout User Interface Control topic in the MaxScript help. After the control keyword is a name that you assign to that control. As before, you use the name elsewhere in the script to refer to that control, say to enable it or disable it, or to get its current value, and so on. This is followed by a text string literal, which is used as the label for the control in the UI. And this is followed by optional keyword parameters that vary depending upon the kind of control. For the count spinner, I've indicated that it should contain only integers, that is whole numbers, and that its value can range from 1 to 100 with a default starting value of 10. The growth spinner is given the same range values, but it can contain fractional real numbers, also called floating point numbers, which is the default if you don't specify a type. As usual, all the kinds of parameters you can supply are listed in the section for each UI control in the help file. The last 3 items in the body is a group of 3 lines that define an event handler. As the user manipulates the controls in the dialog, various events occur, such as spinners being changed, buttons being pressed, checkboxes being selected, and so on. And event handlers are pieces of script that get run whenever these events occur. When you define an event handler, you specify which UI control and which particular event for that control it's associated with. In this example, I've defined a handler for the press event on the button named Create. Whenever the user presses the button labeled Create Spheres, this piece of script will be run, and so a row of spheres will be created every time the user presses the button. A handler is always introduced with the word on, followed by the name of the control it's handling an event for, and then the name of the particular event, followed by the word do. The script after the do is called the body of the event handler, in this case a slightly modified version of the original sphere generating loop. The main difference is that I've replaced the loop range limit with a reference to the value property of the count spinner. Controls have various properties, and you can get and set them with the standard dot property accessing operator. In this case, the .value property gives me the current value in the count spinner, so that the loop will be repeated that number of times. I've also installed the radius growth spinner value into the script, replacing the hard-coded number 10 I had in the original example. This will make the script use the current value of the growth spinner to set the radius increase in the spheres being created. The MaxScript help contains a list of all the events that each kind of control can generate. For example, here's the page for a spinner control. As you can see, it lists all the parameters and all the events. Note that you don't have to specify handlers for all events. As in our example, I just let the spinners change value as the user manipulates them and read the current values in the button pressed handler when the Create button is finally pressed. The final line of code in the script is a function call using the built-in function createDialog. It opens a simple dialog containing the controls and handlers defined by the rollup definition you supply as its first parameter.